Hello, everybody, and welcome into Commodity Culture, where our goal is to make you a better investor in the commodity sector. My name is Jesse Day. Before we dive in, standard disclaimer, nothing here is investment advice. Do your own due diligence. And today's guest is the CEO of Dryden Gold, an exploration company focused on the discovery of high-grade gold mineralization. We're going to dive into Dryden Gold as well as some very interesting recent developments in the gold space. It's Trey Wasser. Great to have you back on the show.
Hey Jesse, how you doing?
I'm doing great, thanks. I sent you my normal list of questions like I always do, and I got a reply that was brilliant because you pointed out that four major events have happened in the past few weeks with broad implications for the gold market. The first is the reclassification of gold under Basel III. A lot of people have heard of Basel III. For those who haven't, it allows banks, other financial institutions to store gold on their balance sheet as a tier one asset equivalent to US treasuries. Is there anything else I'm missing about Basel III there? And July 1st, I believe, was the date where it was fully implemented in the United States. What do you think the potential implications could be? And any more details on Basel III that I missed in that intro?
Well, look, I have not spent enough time looking at what the implications are worldwide, but on January or July 1st, we saw that those uh, tier one designation for gold in the U.S. took effect. I mean, you're looking at a market there, Jesse. $3.2 trillion, I believe, is pretty close to the current reserves of the all the U.S. banks and that are having to be held. And so if you look at even say 5% of that, and you're looking at $150 billion potential buyer buying of physical gold. Now, obviously, it's not going to happen overnight, but put that in context. I mean, I think 150 billion. I think Fort Knox is 250 billion. China is by far the largest holder, but this would rank it right up there as one of the top five central banks. And keep in mind, this is not a central bank who's just adding to an already established position. This is, like a whole new buyer. So, we've always been a bit restricted in the gold market as far as liquidity and who the buyers were, the central banks and jewelry and some manufacturing and stuff, but and of course then the personal consumption and stacking. But to have a new buyer of this size potentially in the market, and with banks like Bank of America, projecting gold prices to be $4,000 next year, I think it's reasonable to assume that Bank of America is probably going to start buying some gold to shore up their diversify their reserves.
Yeah, very interesting events to be sure. And when it comes to the gold space, I feel like institutions have really come out ahead. At this point in time, they are realizing the value of holding gold, starting with central banks in the aftermath of the US and their allies freezing Russian FX reserves. And now, not only central banks, but we could be in a situation where regular banks in the United States are now able to stack gold and have it as a tier one asset. Very interesting to see how this all develops. And as you mentioned, I think could bring a lot of new capital into the space from this new buyer. Let's talk about the Genius Act. I'm going to read a quote from CBS News. It says the Genius Act is the first major law governing digital currency and establishes a regulatory framework for the $250 billion stable coin market. Now, a couple other news items to kind of compartmentalize in with this. That is that Peter Schiff has announced he is starting a gold-backed stablecoin. I did not know this. You brought this to my attention. And the Tether purchased a controlling interest in Elemental Royalties, a gold and silver royalty company. Very fascinating. Tie this all together for us. What does this mean for the U.S. economy, the U.S. dollar, and the gold market in your view?
Right. Well, look, being a U.S. citizen, I I get a kick out of how they name these bills. We had the Inflation Reduction Act under the Biden administration, which was anything but that. But I want to tell you, this bill is very properly named. This, for to get out ahead of the uh, digitization of money, and the U.S. to take a position really is genius. Now, the people who put the bill together, and I think everybody kind of will always attribute Donald Trump to being the genius here, and I'm not sure that's necessarily true. But let's just break it down. I mean, so first of all, there was a big pushback to the idea of doing a digital dollar in the U.S. Too much control, government being able to look over, knowing every move you made, everything you bought, everything. And so, there was so much pushback to that they decided to go the private route with this and support that. Okay, now they are still going to have, there's still a lot of rules in there, and I don't know, I haven't, delved into all of them, but basically overall, they're still going to have the ability to to look through these private stablecoin issuers and do things like sanctions and that type of thing. So the confiscation and stuff. I mean, to me, it's always okay. So you have the digital dollar. It can never go up above a dollar. It's pegged to the dollar. Dollar's not exactly an appreciating asset. We all know it's depreciating and buys less, but it's still always worth a dollar, right? I mean, the dollar just buys you less. So, if you have something that has securitization, it has the risk of, confiscation, it has custodial risk, everything else. So while the risk may be very small, there is a risk. I mean, so stablecoins ultimately are at this point are used much more internationally by, countries and people in third world countries who don't have access to a bank account. If you have a checking account, you don't really need the stable coin. If you have a credit card, you really don't need it because, I use my American Express card. I can buy whatever I want up to my limit. I pay them off at the end of the month and I'm using their money. Now with stable coins, of course, you have to put the money actually on deposit and buy the coins and have it there. But for people in third world countries that don't have access to banking and credit and need a form of being able to trade, the digital dollar is really again, it's genius of them to do this because what they've done is for sure extended and enhanced the dollar's position as a world reserve currency. I mean, the dollar's now in the future going nowhere. It was probably going nowhere. It was never going to get replaced anyway, in my opinion. But now, this is really cemented. I think this is as big for the dollar as in the 1970s when Nixon convinced Saudi Arabia to trade oil in just U.S. dollars, which is what made the dollar the reserve currency. So genius. It also, like I said, creates because these they have to be backed by tier one assets, right? So you have to have dollar for dollar U.S. treasuries and or gold, and you have to back 100%. So today the market is for U.S. backed dollar stablecoins is about 250 billion, but that's projected to grow to 3.7 trillion by Citibank by the end of the decade. So what have they done? They've turned every poor person in the third world countries into basically a buyer of U.S. treasuries at a time where, guess what we needed was buyers for U.S. treasuries. I mean, all you've heard about lately is how there's not enough buyers, and we have obviously too much debt, and who's going to buy all these U.S. treasuries? Well, genius. The So you look at that, and of course this will allow now U.S. banks will be entering this stablecoin business as it evolves, and I think we're all going to be surprised in how fast things are implemented here. But the And by keeping this private, what they've done is allowed, of course, our politicians and billionaires to participate in this and make money. In fact, the Trump family has already started their own stable coin. So go figure, huh? The but but looking at that market now, okay, so 3.2 trillion. Again, now you have another 180, 3.7 trillion. I said, I'm sorry, another 185 billion of at 5% of potential buying in the gold market. And this is not something that, we're just hoping happens. The largest stablecoin issuer, Tether, which is of a 200, what is today a $250 billion market, uh, has about 160 billion in assets. They own about 100 billion in U.S. Treasuries, making it the fifth largest holder of U.S. Treasuries among the central banks today, and growing. They're seeing inflows of billions of dollars a month, if not billions of dollars a week. So now you have yet another 185, and they actually own 5% in in gold. So they have about of 80 tons, a 5% position. So this is not something that's might happen. It's actually is happening, and as they see inflows of money, you have a new buyer of gold. And as more stable coins backed by the US dollar are established, we always thought that crypto would rob the gold market, and instead today it looks like crypto is going to feed the gold market. So another big buyer, and again, as big as one of the top five central banks as far as potential gold ownership in these. So again, very exciting, this month of these things that have happened for in the gold market. And now to add, as you mentioned, the gold backed, the gold backed tokens or stable coins that are 100% backed by gold. That's an infant market today, only about $2 billion. But I think, as you see more, you're going to see these stable coins kind of take over in the tokenization of a lot of the securities markets. So, I don't know that to some degree, it'll be a growing market. I don't think near as big as the 5% of the overall stablecoin market, but the and a lot of the gold-backed stablecoins will probably steal money from the ETFs and stuff. You'll buy, it would make more sense to buy maybe and maybe even safer and certainly more liquid to buy a gold-backed stablecoin than to have a gold-backed ETF. So I think a lot of that are changes we'll see. Now, you mentioned one other thing, and that adds fuel to the fire here, and that's the fact that Tether just took a 51% position in Elemental Royalties. Now, we don't know the implications of that. That just happened this month. They bought that stock, a lot of it in the open market, and some from the company to take this position. They definitely are taking over the board. And we don't know exactly what their intentions are. I mean, the company line is that they're going to provide funding and capital for Elemental to buy more royalties. With them at 51%, I mean, I've also heard the other side of this where maybe they are just going to not do any new business and just want to own basically those that can or control that flow of gold coming in from the royalty portfolio and the copper at Elemental. We don't know yet, but again, very interesting. I mean, does this mean that other royalty companies are in play? Very likely, I think. Are other gold producers even in play? Possibly. But again, just I think it's been an incredibly busy month here in July. and will go down as history as I think as a real turning point as far as the gold market goes, with all this potential for new buying of physical gold.
Yeah, super exciting times. And I don't think the gold space even needed these catalysts to be extraordinarily bullish. So, with all these factors now lining up in gold's favor, I mean, it just seems like a no brainer to me overall. Well, let's switch to the gold mining sector specifically, talk about Dryden Gold. Last time I had you on was April. Could you give us an update on the company and maybe a summary of the progress you've made since then?
Yeah, probably most recently last week, Jesse, we announced a financing of up to $7 million. It's a combination of flow through money, charity flow through, and some hard dollars. Kind of came a little soon, but we had some of our major shareholders that really were so impressed with the progress we've made here, and how everything is shaping up, that the stock had a good run when we announced that new discovery with that really high grade gold. It was really spectacular. Uh, uh, 300 grams per ton over 3.9 meters. I think it was maybe in the top 3 or 4 last month of in the month of across the industry. But so the stock ran up, and the into the mid to high 20 cent range, from down around 11, 12 cents. And these investors said, look, if the stock calms down, we'd be willing to step in. And so, we have a full book after just a couple of days. We announced this on Tuesday. The book's completely full of with 7 million raised. So what that means for us is that we have, we were fully budgeted for this year for a full 15,000 meters, and we're only about halfway through that budget. Now we've got the budget to continue to drill this into the fall. And because at least, of this financing, 5.5 million will be in flow through funds, so have to go into exploration. That's the size of our budget for all last year. Um, and so we'll be adding that. And all of our field work that we've done, which we spent quite a bit of our, but in our budget, about a third, maybe a little more, was for field work, a property-wide soil till, some mapping and sampling and channel sampling over at our Hinman property. So of course, all those things are already paid for and budgeted. And while we may expand the channel sampling some, for the most part, all of this new money will be going into the drill bit. And we're just very proud of our team there. I think this is another thing that, we now have about 10 people on staff. I mean, growing. People forget that we're only a year and a half old in the public market. We get compared to companies that have been around for 5, 6 years. But so we're now doing all of our drilling and backup and logging and everything with our own group. It's much more efficient, of course, right there in Dryden with the good access. So we've got our drilling costs down to under $220 a meter. So basically, I don't know that anybody's doing it any cheaper. That's for sure. So yeah, that means we're going to get a lot more drilling done here this fall and going into next year. And we'll at this point probably be close to middle part of next year anyway before we even need to think about financing again. So a lot of news, a lot of drilling, a lot of excitement to come out, and the only way people are going to be able to participate is in the open market.
Fantastic summary there. Why don't you dive a little deeper into that monumental discovery at Gold Rock? Walk us through the details, what they mean for the company moving forward. Obviously, you've alluded to some of it, but get into the details for us.
Well, look, the big breakthrough for us geologically came through some mapping that we did with an outside consultant, John Fingus, who's probably one of the smartest mappers. He spent about 3 years unwrapping the Newfound Gold property, and he worked with Maura at Red Lake, and he spent last summer out there. And from that report, what he discovered or confirmed was that we have a third deformation event in the camp that runs north south. We've always known we had the major deformation event and the east west structures. We talked about those a lot. But now we have this north south that's really it's really allowed us a way to vector into the high grade gold. So we're really able, and if you look at there's Moore has done a really good slide, and also a little video on this that's on the website, and it really shows how we're able to everything lines up in just this 1.5 kilometer square area that we call the Gold Rock target, and so that's really helped us to hone in on the higher grade gold. And the the other thing is, as we've now been drilling deeper, which we said we'd start drilling deeper, is we're starting to see multiple stack structures that don't have no surface expression. And now these run parallel to the Elora and Big Master structures systems that had the historic mining on them that did have surface expression. And but these are all up at the Laurentian. We hit between 300 and 400 meters depth. We hit three stack structures that totaled about 25 meters, and at where we had this really high grade hit, this again was on a stack structure with no surface expression, uh, 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 parallel to the down at the Jubilee zone where we had been drilling, and we're actually drilling into the Jubilee zone when we hit this, and then as we stepped out to drill underneath that and drill it deeper, we hit another one with visible gold and high grade gold in it. So we're seeing this is, we make the comparison to Red Lake a lot, and this is very much like what happened at the Red Lake mine. There were the main structures that got mined there. They didn't hit till they were mining down about 300 meters depth, and they started hitting these stack structures, and they hit 8 to 10 of them. And this is where all the high grade gold was. It started at 300, and then these structures just kept going. But absolutely no surface expression of these. So we're seeing this one area here in the Gold Rock camp that we call the Gold Rock target, really expanding and looking very good at near surface. So I mean, as we see more and more of these near surface, we're starting to see open pit potential, kind of opening up. And again, we've got a lot more work to do there, but it's looking very interesting in this area, and it's only part of the story. The Gold Rock camp, we have multiple targets areas like this that we are at different stages of being developed. One that we call Mud Lake is just about 2 kilometers to the north, and John Fingus mapped that out for us last summer, and we tested that and had high grade. So we're going to go up and drill that to show we can find more of these. And then we have another 7 or 8 target areas within the Gold Rock camp. So very exciting. This thing just continues to look bigger and bigger in just the Gold Rock camp.
Absolutely. What are if you could summarize what the main catalyst you think that shareholders of Dryden Gold could look forward to for the remainder of 2025 and into 2026, what would you have people focus on?
Well, yeah, we actually are bringing that up, and I didn't talk about our two regional targets. One is Sheridan, that's down to the south, outside of the Gold Rock camp. We did receive 3 permits this year regionally for exploration areas. So Sheridan is a whole different animal. It's in ultramafic rocks and has a different structure and control that we spent a lot of time getting mapped out. Has super high grade gold down there, surface samples as high as 600 grams per ton, several over 100 grams per ton. So as we speak, we have put a second drill rig down at Sheridan, and then over to the east on our Hinman project, We've got an outside group, Fladgate. That is an area where it was clear cut a few years ago by the forestry there. And so we flew a drone over that and we saw these structures running for 4 or 5 kilometers through there. So we ran the last year, did the geophysics on that and the LIDAR, and we came up with 9 targets on that, and only were able to test a few of them. But again, high grade, over an ounce per ton in surface samples. And so Fladgate is actually doing that on the outside now, and they're doing channel sampling over there so we can get an idea of what the footprint looks like. This is yet a different style of rocks. This is much like Next Gold's Goldland project. It's in the granodiorite with quartz stock. It would be an open pit target. And our footprint is probably about 5 times as big as the Goldland footprint. So very big potential over at Hinman. So let's sum it up. We think we've got 4 major catalysts this year. One, we will continue to work very hard and unwrapping, unfolding, and showing the real huge potential in just the Gold Rock target area. Then we will drill up at Mud Lake, because then we will show the market that we can find more of these target areas. And like I said, if you look at the website, we've got several more that are being in different stages of being developed and getting drill ready. So if we can show the market that, hey, what we have here at the Gold Rock target area is very interesting, but we think there's a lot more of these kind of areas. That periodicity is, again, a very similar story to the Red Lake, where most of your over an 8-kilometer area, and we have 20 kilometers in the Gold Rock camp, but over 8 kilometers there, of the 30 million ounces that were produced in the Red Lake camp, 28 million of them came from between that 3 different mines in that 8-kilometer area, the Red Lake, the Campbell, and the Coconut. So then on top of that, we have the catalyst of a potential new discovery at Sheridan, where we're drilling now, and we'll have results out over the next couple months. And then the channel sampling will be completed late this summer, fall at Hinman. So really, we have 4 major catalysts, all of which we think are exciting, and we really think by the end of this year, the market, and especially the strategic investors that we have, Centerra, Alamos, and all the other companies that are watching us, are going to realize that this is a very big district play. We have the Gold Rock camp that's in the lode gold Archean system. We have the ultramafic rocks down at Sheridan. We have the granodiorite stockwork near surface targets at Hinman. And then, of course, up at Goliath, Next Gold's project, they have VMS up there in the Goliath. So you really are starting to see a district here that looks more like Timmins or Val-d'Or, where you have, mines that are 10, 20 kilometers apart, and yet are all in different types of styles of mineralization. So, bottom line is this area was so well endowed with high-grade gold that it doesn't really matter which of these host rock types you're in. They all seem to be well endowed with gold.
Well, Trey, this has been a fantastic conversation. I'm going to put a link in the description below where people can visit the Dryden Gold website as well as social media profile. It should be noted you're also now listed on the Frankfurt Stock Exchange. That symbol will have been appearing on screen throughout this interview for investors in Europe. So that's obviously also exciting. Trey, it's been fantastic having you on, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with the audience.
Thanks, Jesse. Always a pleasure.
Commodity Culture is a series on commodities and natural resources. If you would like to see more, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification so you're always up to date with the latest episodes.